Today I've got a replay from Glorious Feeder, and what I can only imagine is a ladder battle. Looking at the builds here, what he describes is a good example about how hiding has changed for the better in Domination. You look at this Kislev build here and you'll immediately notice it's quite heavy on the war sleds. He could have even gone with some horse archers too. I mean, this isn't even maximum hiding. But of course, in Domination, you having to move up and secure objectives means that a build like this potentially might not work as well. Of course, given that you're on a timer in Domination, right? Whereas opposed in land battles, as long as you're fulfilling the attacking rule in tournaments, you can pretty much play as long as you want, right? And just very patiently use all of your ammunition. Try and draw your opponent out of position, catch them in any mistakes, and I've seen that style of play be very effective. It is not very fun to watch, and in a lot of people's opinion, it's not very fun to play against, right? So, while it is technically very skillful, yes, I will fully admit that, and I see it as a legitimate play style, especially in land battles. But the fact that so many people don't enjoy it means that by Domination's very nature, they'll see it as an improvement with Domination, right? And that's what we're going to see here today with this replay. Nurgle versus Kislev. Glorious Feeder coming in with the Herald Nurgle up on the fly. He's got a Great Unclean One and a Soul Grinder with 4 Plague Bearers. Spawn in reserve, 3 Drop Flies, 2 Forsaken, 2 Plague Toads, 2 Furies, and 4 Nurglings for his opponent. Constantine leading a heavy sled force of 3 heavy sleds and 1 light sled. Kossar Spears, 3 Kossars as well. Then in reserve, we got a Frost Maiden of Ice, Patriarch, 3, count them, 3 Warbear Riders, very heavy anti-large cavalry force there. 3 Kossar Spears, and another regular Kossar as well. I apologize, we're on Death's Pass once again for a second day in a row, but that's fine. It's a totally fine map. Not the best, but also not the worst. And it's definitely an interesting one to look at some different concepts. So, like I said, this Kislev build, I mean, it could be even more all-in on the kiting. I have to remember exactly what it's limited to in unit caps. I think, is it 6 360 shooting units? Missile cavalry and chariots, so maybe you could take 2 horse archers on top of this just to really complete, the kiting agenda. But we'll see. Nurgle is definitely one of those factions that in the land battle, you are very weak to kiting because you're so slow. As I showed recently in a land battle, with Slaanesh versus Kislev, right? Kislev wins versus Slaanesh. If you take out Slaanesh's mobility, in a similar situation, Slaanesh has no ability to respond, right, to that horse archer and the red sled play if they want to sit back and shoot. So, thankfully, Nurgle, while they don't have the same mobility to even try to attempt to catch, what they do have is loads of HP and healing. Try and just stand there and take the shots. And in the context of Domination, heavy capture weight with high HP and tankiness means that they can just get on the objective and hold it. Let's see. If the Kislev player was smart, he might try and just run for a quick hit and run charge here on these Plague Bearers. I mean, he's got 4 units of sleds here. And while, yes, there is a Great Unclean One and a Soul Grinder, they're only going to do so much to protect this line. So in reality, he could come forward for a quick hit and run charge here, but it looks like right now, at least he's just going to be content to sit back and use the guns of the sleds. Try and pick off the Herald here. Herald is taking significant damage, so hey, it's kind of working, to be honest, but interesting to note this style of play here. From Nurgle's perspective, it's tough. These 2 high mass units will somewhat help resist if Nurgle did go all in for a charge, but they're only going to do so much. You would still end up taking quite a bit of damage, and even just the focus missile fire here is enough to deal significant damage to something like this big Chungus. Of course, he did get bound spells now, so he now has 1 use of Bound, Stream of Corruption, and Miasma of Pestilence, which is definitely a better use of resources rather than having to use actual Winds of Magic. Got, of course, Locus of Fecundity here, Stream of Corruption, Fleshy Abundance. We're going to see that Locus of Fecundity help heal the Soul Grinder and the Plague Bears and the Great Unclean One. That's one thing. You can kind of just burn the resources, right, of all of these shots, but here comes the charge of the chariots. Probably should have come quite some time ago, like I said, but you could have probably got at least 3 or 4 cycle charges in by now before they got to the objective, but hey, better late than never, I suppose. A little bit of overcast fleshy abundance as well to heal both the Great Unclean One and the Herald of Nurgle. Fortunately, wasn't able to hit either of those infantry units, but it should still be okay. They're going to push forward, and right as the objective comes online, they are in a position to secure. Meanwhile, the saga of these other two Plague Bearers that I've completely ignored so far managed to come over here and start to secure this objective, taking a little bit of shots from the Kossars. It's going to take the Kossars quite some time to shoot them down completely. May even be able to get the cap of the objective. In the meantime, Plague Mortar also firing, landing some solid shots on the Kossar spears there in the distance, while the chariots continue to cycle charge and shoot. Again, the fact that the chariots are hanging back, in my opinion, is a little bit of a mistake. All of the chariots could be cycle charging, and instead it's just two units right here kind of individually, I guess not individually, but in pairs, sort of running in and out. Although, there are these rot flies here now. I guess if the chariots charged in, they could get countercharged by the rot flies, but I think that's still probably an engagement, even after the nerfs, that's not going to go amazingly for the rot flies, especially considering the archers' support here. But let's see. More warbear riders, or bears just to begin with. They're, in fact, the riders, though, have been called in. Constantine and the Patriarch, ready to ride up front. Other side objective has been capped by some Nurglings, so in terms of objective play, this is great. It's a full 3 cap from Nurgle early on, which, you know, for Kislev to concede this, they might be just banking on the catch-up mechanic to try and go for a full 3 cap in the endgame, but at the same time, you're basically, you know, guessing, more or less, that you're going to be able to take all 3 objectives at some point, which is, against Nurgle, definitely not guaranteed. I mean, taking one objective from Nurgle, if they are seriously, you know, putting a lot of effort into defending it, that in and of itself is difficult enough. But to, you know, say, yes, I can cap all 3 objectives from Nurgle is just downright ballsy, possibly foolish. We'll have to wait and see. But for the time being, the Kislev concave of fire is just pouring in, you know, arrows and shot into these Plague Bearers, into the Great Unclean One. They are spreading their damage around very politely for Nurgle, so Glorious Feeder can sort of get a nice AoE heal and just get all of these units popped back up and just continue to waste the ammunition there. The 2 legendary Plague Bearers of the Long Journey have marched all the way back over to the other side of the hill and are preparing for their next action. We'll have to wait and see what that will be. Let's check back in the front line. Plague Mortar is the only thing that can kind of return fire here. He's a little bit saturated in these spawn, kind of getting some protection from them, from a lot of these missiles. Sleds are starting to run out. They are getting quite low. Nice stream of corruption there. Does hit some of those Kossars and other units, but they're just content to keep firing at this point. Warbear riders are thinking about charging in, decide, you know what, let's just wait even longer. And once again, this is a situation where in land battles, you'd be pretty hosed as Nurgle. I mean, if you had Kugath and double mortar, maybe you have enough to shoot back. You know, the Death's Heads units also afford you limited opportunity to shoot back, but their range is so low that Kislev player can just stay out of range and won't be able to catch them, right? So, this being Domination, though, Nurgle's just securing the objectives and getting pretty far ahead on points. Kislev was able to come back and seize this one here. But they aren't really doing much to come capture this other side objective here that's just being weakly held by a couple of Nurglings. Instead, concentrating all this value in on the center, which, don't get me wrong, they've been trading very cost-effectively, but now, finally out of ammunition, here comes the charge of Warbear Riders. There's 2 units now. Chariots also charging in. Maybe. I mean, they charge and then immediately feint back out. I guess, is he trying to draw in the rot flies into a bad engagement? Not really sure. But all the single entities for Nurgle are still alive, which is very important. The Soul Grinder, Great Unclean One can charge into combat and help out here should they so choose. But the rot flies, at the very least, are going to come down now. Here comes the Great Unclean One. Looks like we've got debuff there on the Bear Riders. Yep. Miasma of Pestilence, Tor's Battle Hymn, Salyak's Lullaby. So all the stuff being popped, and yeah, that did not go great for Nurgle by any means. That being said, even if they end up losing here, it's still worth it for Nurgle just to continue to fight here for as long as possible, being that Glorious Feeder is far enough ahead at this point that he can pretty much just about go for a single cap and still win. So as long as he can continue to hold his own kind of side objective there and just continue to contest even in the center and occupy these Kislev forces so they can't go and try and cap the other objective, That's all that needs to happen. So let's see if Glorious Feeder is able to hold on for the win here. Definitely going to be very tight. But right now, those other Plague Bears, long-suffering, foot-slogging Plague Bears, are now facing their doom against the many bears of the center objective as the Herald of Nurgle just cackles up above. Given that most of the units with missiles have used their ammunition, he's relatively safe to just kind of hang out up here. That being said, his ground forces are definitely going down in a big hurry. The Skull Grinder tries to pull away to use up last of its ammunition. Plague Bear is just slowly getting bopped in the face by bears. Probably eaten, which, let's be honest, is probably going to make the bears very sick. Like, could you imagine your job is to clean out the bear pens after they've been eating Plague Bears all day? Like, oh no. That's got to be top one worst job in Kislev, for sure, is a bear mucker. But anyway. Yes. That being said, the bears are finally breaking through. He's sent a couple of chariots and a unit of bear riders over to try and secure this objective. Honestly, the bear riders probably could have charged in already to start the process, but Glorious Feeder does need to maintain this objective in order to win. Not for quite a bit of time. He's not getting that much victory tickets here. It's going to pick up relatively slowly, so let's see. He's also sending a force of Nurglings just to occupy. This is also pretty smart in that it's going to draw a lot of resources away from these other fights in terms of the response here. Kislev way over investing in terms of resources just to deal with 3 Nurglings, but at the same time, I kind of get it. Probably feeling pretty confident that he's going to get a full 3 cap. He's definitely secured the center, there's no question. Constantine's force being very strong. Over here, we've got the Bear Riders charging in, the Forsaken. The Nurglings try and countercharge, but they are in for a rough time. There's no question they're going to lose. But can they hold for long enough is the question. We've got a couple of Toads being brought in as reinforcement to try and keep them, fighting, try and keep that objective secured. And from Kislev's perspective, I mean, continuing to fight here in the center is not a full mistake, but I would probably pull, at the very least, both of the Bear Riders away and just let the chariots, the sleds, continue to hold there. Pull both of the Bear Riders in and kind of counter-collapse those Toads. Make sure you can actually get this final objective, because unless you cap that third objective, Nurgle is going to hold on for the win. Kislev will just lose, right? So there's that. The desperate distraction of the Nurglings. I'm blanking on the word right now. Diversion, that's right. Diversionary attack of the Nurglings here over on the side objective is working. Definitely tons of Kossars. The Herald of Nurgle also came over here just to make it really, really convincing and to draw even more resources away from the center. Huge mistake by the Kislev player going for the Lord Snipe here. Yeah, instead of actually going for the win, which would be to deploy, again, the Bears, Constantine, all of them could have come over at this point and tried to wrest this final objective, but instead, Toads are going to be able to hold, even though, I mean, they wouldn't win this fight anyway. It is going to take them a long time, especially because notice how the chariots are kind of blocking the Bear Riders from fully getting into base contact here. Like, quite a few of the Bear Riders, 1, 2, 3 over here, 4 possibly or more, are like not even able to contact the Toads because they're stuck behind the chariots. So a little bit of a weird engagement will mean that the Toads can survive for longer than what you might expect due to the pathing situation there. Over on the other side too, again, all the bears and stuff that were drawn out of position just easily left in the dust as the Herald flies back up into the air with all the safety of his decrepit wings. Now, I actually really like the drone in a number of matchups. I like the Palanquin here for a few reasons. I do find that on the Palanquin he could trade reasonably well against bear characters. That being said, though, the drone definitely offers you a lot of upside in terms of mobility and safety against a faction with very limited very limited flying, no flying in fact, their only ability to deal with it being they're ranged. So, will Glorious Feeder be able to hold on for the win? We've got more Furies coming over, more Nurglings just to intercept the additional chariots. Finally, more Bear Riders and Constantine being pulled over to try and finish the secure on this objective, because the Toads have just been able to hold, and with the Furies now supporting, they're actually able to somewhat, kind of, maybe, sort of win this engagement. Not exactly, but at the very least hold for long enough that it will matter. here comes the final push. Furies and the Herald coming in. The Herald doing a great job just sacrificing himself with his Furies to distract Constantine and the Patriarch. Try and keep as many of these unit models from getting there as possible. More Plague Bears and Nurglings moving in just to provide extra capture weight too. So it's going to be very close. Kislev is doing their best to try and wrest this final objective from the servants of the Plague Lord. But here comes the Herald. Yes. Death's Head proudly displayed. Bell ringing. He's going to charge in here, get some good armor-piercing damage in, do everything he can to help support. The Patriarch comes to block, but yeah, and for Kislev, they should probably pull a couple of units to come block these infantry from actually getting onto this objective, and then keep the Bear Riders here probably with Constantine to continue to capture. But I mean, at this point, it's just the Nurglings providing any sort of capture weight on this objective, but it's too late. You look up, you look at the scoreboard, and suddenly you realize Nurgle has managed to pull it off. The clutch Nurglings holding capture weight of the objective just long enough to get a victory. Perhaps it's going to be super close, guys, but it does in fact result in a Nurgle victory. So there you go. Very fun stuff. Big thanks to Glorious Peters for sending that one in, and I definitely agree with him as somebody who not that I can't play against a kite. It's just very frustrating, and especially with factions that have as limited rosters as the Game 3 factions currently have. I mean, I would definitely look forward to them getting more tactical flexibility in the future with more units to fill out their rosters, but as it stands right now, they're very limited in what they can do. They play very well into their theme, but all of the Chaos factions, I mean, aside from maybe Tzeentch, they have the most flexibility because they have the best missiles, right? But in general, Slaanesh, Nurgle, and Khorne all have a pretty limited amount of tools of what they can bring. Granted, they're very good at what they do, so playing into that strength here for Nurgle did result in a win. I do think perhaps that a couple of changes from Kislev would have resulted in them winning, given the same builds and similar executions. Again, just that sort of early cycle charge from the chariots into the initial Plague Bears there, and then peeling the Bear Riders and the chariots, the Bear sleds earlier over onto the Nurgle home objective could have changed the outcome of this battle, absolutely. But it's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. At the end of the day, Glorious Feeder was able to take home the win, so credit to him for that. These single entities all had a pretty tough time. I mean, the Herald definitely did some good job supporting, flying around, just being in different places. But in general, the Nurgle army is really not going to do well in terms of damage value. They pretty much just got out-traded on every front. But Kislev didn't press their advantage to cap the objectives, and as a result, ended up losing the battle. And again, this is one of the situations where in land battles, if you were to take very similar builds, Nurgle probably would lose this every time. But because it's Domination, you actually do have a chance to win, and that's one great thing about Domination, definitely. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.